Hi art friends, and welcome to Doodles
Oh god.
and Tea.
How long has it been since we did a Doodles and Tea, honey?
I think it's been over a year at this point. If you didn't know, this is like a little series we've got on our channel, which is a bit more of like a relaxed format where we just have a doodle together and there'll be like a certain topic that we talk about. And, of course, we have got a cup of tea.
Look how red that is. Today's tea is...
Cranberry and raspberry. Adam picked this up.
I did. I saw this and it made me think of you straight away.
We've got Adam's like really old school sketchbook here.
It's the OG, and we haven't finished this one either.
So as you might have seen from the title, this is going to be mostly about how I recently got an autism diagnosis. Now, I talked about this on the channel quite a long time ago.
Yes, you did. In this country, I don't know how similar it is where you guys are, but here in the UK where we are, you have to fill out a form and give that into your like GP or general practice doctors that's closest to you. They're then supposed to get back to you within a decent time frame, but they lost Steph's forms 3 times.
3 times, yeah.
And it, as
Third time's the charm.
yeah, and as a result, it took 5 years for her to get seen to, which happened this year finally, didn't it?
Yeah, I finally went through the actual diagnosis process, which is like hours and hours of talking to like these clinicians and doctors and
Who were very sweet, by the way. They were very nice.
but it was very like overwhelming for me because I'm someone who gets quite burnt out from being in a conversation, which probably seems hilarious because I'm like a YouTuber, but I think that's because it feels more like I'm talking to myself when I've got like a camera set up.
Completely different, yeah. I mean, this was all done over what was it, Microsoft Teams? It was online, wasn't it, with webcams?
I didn't even have to go into any like doctor's offices, so...
Which was cool, really, because you were in your like safe, comfortable,
I was
like
in my
safe
comfort
space.
zone, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you were yourself, and I think that helped you a lot.
So I thought it might be nice to, one, talk about like some of the diagnosis process. It might also be nice to talk about some of the symptoms that I feel like I had that maybe if I'd had them in 2025 as like a child, I think I might have been like diagnosed much earlier.
Oh, well, it's come along such a long way, hasn't it, since we were kids?
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of our audience who are also on the spectrum or
That's true.
also neurodivergent with like ADHD and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah.
So I'm sure a bunch of you guys are already like educated on these matters.
Some of you guys probably already thought, oh, she's autistic.
Yeah, to be honest, one of the first things that I ever was told with autism when I first started looking into it is that when you start telling people that you think you might be autistic or that you're being like evaluated for it, everyone will say, but you don't look autistic, or no,
I've heard that.
you're not autistic, or whatever.
How does one look
Well,
autistic?
exactly. I was prepared for this conversation because apparently that's what everyone says to you. And so I approached everyone that I knew and I was like, you know what? I'm in the process at the moment that there's been suspicion from like therapists and doctors, even sort of like...
It's not just like random people, no, qualified professionals.
Yeah, it's been like
had
qualified
hinted
people who sort of hinted that they reckon that I might be like neurodivergent.
That's right, yeah.
And people that I've like worked with for like over like 3 years or something, so it's not someone who's just met me for like 10 minutes.
It's not just someone pointing at you in the street saying, you're right autistic, you are. It's like, no, these are like people that are known to Steph, have known Steph for a long time, and professionals as well.
Yeah, who were like very trained in it. So I was like, if they're saying it, then I trust that it must be a thing. So I started mentioning this to people like in my life. And honestly, as soon as I mentioned it to people, so many of them went, oh, that makes so much sense. And I was like, what do you mean?
Please elaborate.
I know, I was entirely expecting, I don't know, some kind of like disbelief or like, oh no, Steph, you don't look autistic, but apparently I do. So there we go.
Like, Steph's autistic and water is wet.
While I was going through the diagnosis process, because it took about a month after I'd done all like my talking assessments before I got like my results back, and I kept saying to my friends like, I'm so nervous at this point. Like, what if they come back to me and they say that you're neurotypical? And it turns out, like, all these problems that I've had, I'm not, like, an autistic person. And I've, like, invented these problems, like, in my head. That was almost, like, a scarier.
I was never worried. The amount you react to different textures, the fact that you make so many lists and stuff. It's
my
like,
sensory issues.
This was just confirming what I already knew. Which isn't, I don't mean that in a mean way or anything like that.
But yeah, that's very much been the overall vibe from, like, my friends. So I told friends, like, oh no, I'm worried that this might come back saying that I'm not neurodivergent, which is fine if I'm not. I mean,
yeah, absolutely. There's no right or wrong answer with these assessment things anyway.
I've spent a lifetime, like, at this point, thinking that I'm not neurodivergent, so it wouldn't be new to me at this point if that was the case. Mm-hmm. But I think I was more scared because I have been through a lot of intense therapy in the past.
Like years worth.
Years and years and years and years worth of therapy. And it started to get to the point where the therapist was getting kind of, like, fed up / passive aggressive. And they were like, most people who we've dealt with as intensely as you for this long, they're, like, over it by now, or, like, not necessarily, like...
They literally dropped on Steph, you are not like other girls.
But yeah, they were saying, like, you know, this is stuff that we do on, like, tens of thousands of people or whatever, and it's based on, like, evidence-based research and feedback, and this is what works for people. And in the times that it doesn't work for people, that can be a sign that there's, like, neurodivergence there.
Yeah, there's, like, something else going on.
And that completely, like, blew my mind, because I've had, like, a lot of anxiety from, like, a young age. I've definitely had, like, my share of, like, life issues and stuff that have gone on throughout the years. I definitely don't come from, like, a picture-perfect family, or... I get a lot of people who presume that because I'm quite sort of, like, an upbeat and jolly kind of figure.
I always call Steph the rose between the thorns. It's a miracle that Steph has ended up the way she has. I mean, that's her own business, but that's just my opinion.
But yeah, when I mentioned this to, like, friends, every single one of them was just like, honestly, for these clinicians or whatever, this is going to be the easiest day of work for them ever. They're going to go into work, sit down, and you'll speak for, like, 2 seconds, and they'll be like, oh yeah, she has autism. And then they'll be sat there thinking, yeah, this is an easy day. I can go home, feed my kids, put the washing machine on.
I wish all of my patients were like you. So easy.
And I ended up getting, like, a report back, and oh my gosh, the entire thing felt like it was such, like, a roast or, like, a meme.
Well, it's more so like they have to be thorough with these kind of things, you know, and they were thorough, shall we say.
And then they mailed me the report, like, 4 times.
They mailed you like a Bible, it was that thick.
There's 4 of them.
Which I guess is a testament to how well the tests for these things are these days. You know, it's very thorough. You want to feel like you've been properly assessed for something like this. And I feel like you were. Do you feel like you were?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, I've showed a bunch of these, like, report pages to my friends, and they were laughing because they were like, yeah, this is you to, like, a T. It was talking about, my hyperfixations, things that I'm sort of, like, unusually interested in.
Oh, yeah, that's your quirks, then. I don't like the term, like, unusual for stuff like this. You know, everyone has their quirks and interests and stuff. I don't know. I just think a quirk is a bit more nicer than, you know, calling you unusual or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
They're not disabilities, for example. They're exceptionalities.
Well, the thing is that a lot of, I think, the traits of autism have kind of, like, led me to exactly where we are right now. I don't think we'd be YouTubers or, like, artists, maybe.
No,
or
I
at
agree.
least working as, like, full-time artists.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think that's, like, partly down to just how I can get so hyper-focused on doing something, and then I can just do it forever.
That's a superpower, that is. Some people would get bored or they want to do something else, but Steph's like, I like this. Prepare to have this for the next 50 years.
Yeah. And that's kind of what my project Rimsies was when I was younger.
Ooh, gotta whack that in the cards.
So yeah, if you don't know what Rimsies is, this is a great sort of little gateway
Oh my
into
god,
what it
sit
is.
down. You're gonna need it.
It was a paper universe that I made when I was like a kid. Because most kids my age had the internet, and this is like when internet like games were starting to sort of come out and be a thing.
It was just sort of blossoming, yeah.
Yeah, and I couldn't play them, so I'd maybe like get a chance to play on them on like a school computer before like schools blocked all the fun websites.
Hi art friends, welcome to the Floor of Reflection. Did you guys know that our channel is funded through Patreon, and that's the reason why we're able to still make videos to this very day. So if you want to see more videos, subscribe for one, duh. And also consider supporting us on Patreon so we can bring you even more snazzy videos.
And then maybe sometimes on like a weekend at like a different relative's house, I'd get a chance to play around on one of their computers.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'd get like a peek at something like Neopets, and I'd be mind blown at like how much content is there, but I just didn't have the time to properly like sit and invest in like this entire website.
Yeah.
You need like a lifetime to be able to play something like Neopets.
Oh god,
really.
Neopets, yeah.
And when you sort of like limited to a couple of hours on like the internet, it's not really enough, but it was just fueling my imagination so much. So then I'd go back home and I'd get out like my sketchbooks and my felt tips, all super cheap like art supplies that most like kids have.
Yeah.
And I started to try and make this sort of like an interactive universe where like the characters can like move around, and I was using, we call it blue tack, but I think, do they call it like putty or white tack?
White tack or sticky tack. You know the stuff that you use to put up posters if you don't want to use pins?
Yeah,
That
like on a
stuff.
wall. That's what I was using, so that I didn't have to commit to gluing down any of like the characters on one specific environment, so then it allowed them to like move around, which I think this was probably like a young example of my brain working a bit outside of the box, because I've never seen anyone use blue tack in that kind of way.
Yeah, it's kind of like a 2D almost Polly Pocket where you can
Yeah.
move stuff around and stick. That's the vibe that I get from Rimsies quite a lot, because Steph loves like Polly Pockets and stuff as well, like cute little raiment sets, little tiny things that you can play with, and she sort of transformed that idea into like a 2D world where she could play with it herself, and obviously it was much cheaper for you as well at the time.
Yeah, exactly, because my first ever hyperfocus that I ever had in life was Polly Pockets, which are like the vintage type now, where they come in like the little compact case and they're like a little heart and they have a little character.
They are very cute. Yeah, they're very cute.
I'm still obsessed with them, but oh my gosh, they sell for a lot of money these days, so it's very rare that I get new ones. Unless it's the collector's ones.
The collector, yeah. Polly's quite bougie these days, isn't it? Like, the older they are, the more expensive they tend to be.
But Polly Pocket have made a comeback with the compact style ones.
Ooh.
And they do sometimes these collector's ones where they're either sort of like of a fandom that they've collabed with, or a remake of like an old set that sells for like $500 or something on eBay.
Oh my
So
God.
it's nice knowing that I can finally get some of the ones like remade.
Yeah,
in, like
and
an
not get
affordable
ripped
price.
off, yeah.
I asked like my mum before the diagnosis if she could give me like some bullet points on stuff that was like different about
I
me
remember that.
from other kids.
Yeah.
Kind of tempted to put that bullet list up on
Oh
screen.
my god!
Autism, it can affect people in quite a vast different way of...
Well, it's a spectrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
It affects people in many different ways.
So, for example, sensory sensitivities are definitely have always been the thing that I struggled with the most. And I think one of my earlier signs I can think of that seems unusual to like other people
Oh, okay, yeah.
is you know how like music is like a very sort of universally popular kind of thing that people enjoy like listening to? When I was younger, I hated the sound of music.
Okay.
That sounds like specifically the sound of music, like the do dear. Not specifically that.
The hills were alive with the sound of hatred.
But yeah, I'm not talking about that. I mean, in general, all music used to get on my nerves until I was maybe about secondary school age. And I think it's because I started to realise that socially...
Oh, especially in high school.
Yeah, you had to like music.
Yes.
In fact, they used to play like MTV in our like tutor,
Oh,
like
really?
outside the tutor classrooms for a while when I first joined in like year 7. We had that privilege taken away from us.
Yeah, I can probably see why.
So I really had to start getting myself like used to being around other people's music tastes. But I grew up with a very musical family, and they did a lot of like live gigs and stuff. And one of the main things I always hated whenever I came along to any of these kind of shows is the way that music feels. And when I say that to people, quite often they say like, oh yeah, music gives me like goosebumps, or music makes me feel things, or I feel like emotional when I hear music.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And I'm like, no, I don't mean like emotionally. I mean physically. I can feel music, and I don't like the way that it feels.
Oh, like internally, like in your body, or?
Yeah. So, like, for example, if there was like an earthquake and
Yeah.
you'd feel that going through the ground, I can feel music go through like the ground like that.
Oh, that's very interesting.
But it can make me feel like motion sick.
Yeah, because it's a sensation that you don't like.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And the place where I feel it the most strongly is my stomach.
Oh, and your tummy's very sensitive.
Yeah, I do
anyway.
have a super. I'm typical. It's like, I think the studies to do with like autism, where a lot of them have like sensitive tummies, and I am literally just
You're a little IBS queen.
I get travel sickness,
Yep.
motion sickness.
Yep. Anxiety, sickness.
Yeah.
Well-
Anything that happens, I feel it in my stomach.
Yeah, they say like a gut feeling. You're like the queen of gut feelings.
That's like my only feeling at this point.
It's not that bad. It's not that bad.
So yeah, it's nice that I've been through like so much like therapy, and now so much like talking to doctors who specialise in autism, because I'm finally starting to understand myself, because a lot of the things that I just knew made me weird, or at least the many people who I've met like over the years, because I changed schools like a bunch of times.
Yes, you did. Yeah.
It was so rare that I ever found someone who felt like they were similar to me.
Yeah, Steph's always told me that she's always in school. She always felt like an outcast.
I was told I was an outcast.
Well,
It wasn't an eternal feeling.
No. But like, you know, you struggle to connect with people because of, you know, your personality, but also coupled with the fact that Steph did move around a lot as a kid.
Yeah,
so...
but I was also just a very unrelatable person.
Oh no.
But that's why it's so nice on our YouTube channel now, like all these years later, is that we seem to have attracted like an audience of all kinds of neurodivergent people, creative people, people with disabilities.
People from all over the world in different places.
Yeah, so even though it feels like there's not many people like me, because it's like common through the entire like earth,
Yes.
it feels like 250,000 subscribers feels like a lot of people.
Yeah. Oh,
When it's,
absolutely. That's a lot of anything.
I mean, that's more than the amount of people who used to like go to my schools that have at some point thought, she's relatable.
It's probably more people than what we've both ever seen in real life.
Yeah, definitely.
Like just passing in the street. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
an amazing number.
I'm very like introverted. I'm not a very like social person. I find anything that's crowded like scary. In fact, when I went to university, I used to go to all the big comic conventions in London.
Oh, like MCM. And...
Yeah.
Yes.
And one of the things that I just could not figure out about myself was that when I was inside there and it was at peak times,
So busy.
yeah, I'd have like a panic attack, and I'd run outside, and I'd feel safe when I was outside.
Okay.
So I was looking it up, and there really wasn't much on like the internet at the time, so I was like, oh well, things say that it might be like claustrophobia, maybe that's why it feels like, you know, really confined in there. But
Yeah, 'cause
then
it's so
outside,
busy, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like I can sort of like breathe. And it was annoying me that I was spending so much money on these expensive tickets to events, where essentially I was just doing it because socially everybody else who I was friends with was also buying them.
Did it feel like a social obligation sort of thing?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I enjoyed it when it was quiet.
Yeah, I think I would too.
With this event thing, one of the things that all my friends used to always say is that on the Friday, it's not really worth going because there's just vendors who were like setting up.
And I bet you were like, yes!
And they're saying Saturday and Sundays when everyone goes, so that's when we'll go. And we once went on a Friday, there was no one there, and I could walk around, and it was so quiet, and I was thinking, this is bliss. But everyone else that I was with was like, oh, this is so boring, there isn't anyone else here. They haven't even set up the DDR dance machines.
How am I going to get my groove on? So do you think it's more tied to a sensory, like, sound thing then, with all the people talking and...
Yeah, I think it's probably like a sensory thing that it's like a crowded environment. That also means that it feels hotter. And,
everyone talking and stuff, yeah.
And at those events, I used to be like dressed up in like cosplay or whatever, so I'd have like a wig on and a big like dress.
Oh, so you'd be baking
and I was
anyway.
overheating, so all I wanted to do the entire event was like hide outside. But then my friends, I could tell that they were like politely getting upset, you know, they've bought tickets and they don't want to spend this entire event sat outside the event. They've paid to go to the event,
go inside.
which I can understand.
Yes, yeah.
So then I'd be like, you know, don't mind me sitting out here by myself, it's fine, I don't mind. You go in, do what you need to do, and I promise I'll have a good time sat by myself outside the venue.
Oh.
And I know that sounds like I'm lying, but that is honestly my idea of a good time. So.
Well, but again though, that was before you had a much better understanding as to what you were feeling and experiencing. And I don't think your friend group necessarily knew either, you know. It was hard for you to understand and explain what was going on then because you didn't know what it was.
And just in general, like, neurodivergence wasn't like massively understood back then, so I do reckon a few of those other friends that I had there were probably like on the ADHD kind of side of things.
Potentially,
but
yeah.
I think the things that really stimulated them overstimulated me, and I didn't realise.
That goes back to it being like a whole spectrum, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Like one person's trash might be someone's treasure kind of thing, so...
So, like, one of my internal, like, alarms is that whenever I can tell that an environment's getting, like, really loud, my instinct is to sort of, like, hedge away from it and I'll go in sort of the opposite direction.
Yeah, you just sort of splinter off to find somewhere more quiet, yeah.
Yeah, whereas a bunch of my friends are really sort of attracted to that kind of hustle and bustle and, like, noise.
Yeah, they like the hype, yes.
Yeah, and I can do it sort of, like, as a sensory stimulant, as a novelty. I might be able to do it for like half an hour or something, but it starts to wear off really quickly.
Yeah, like the people talk about like having a social battery, and with Steph and myself, we have one, but it's not very big.
It's like a watch battery, you know, like those little tiny ones.
It's the little circle ones, yeah.
The circle ones. If there's anything that we've like discussed about autism or whatever, or any sort of questions that you have on this topic, we're looking at coming back with more Doodles and Tea episodes.
Yeah, to
like,
discuss it some more. Now we have a much better understanding of it. We can sort of cover like our journey with Steph in understanding it better and discussing things that you might struggle with, some things that you might do really well with. You know, it's a journey, you know.
And I always go through like phases where I'm sort of like, Doodles and Tea season, it's like over. Is this like season 3 that we're on now?
I would think so,
or
yeah.
is it season 4? We'll have to
I think
figure
it's
that out.
3. I think it's 3.
But yeah, if there's any sort of topics that you'd be interested in us talking about on more of these, and
yes,
if you didn't know, we have a full playlist of Doodles and Tea, so if you were looking to just sort of like chill out and listen to us while we draw, if you want to have a draw along with us. This one was obviously very centered on the topic of like autism, because that's a very big thing that's happening with me right now.
It's a big thing that's happening in your life.
But
yes.
these aren't always necessarily autism centric.
No, I drew on a cake once.
We drew space pies.
Space pie, yeah.
But yeah, please check out the playlist. And this has always been like one of my favourite series on the channel, just because it's so difficult with other sort of dedicated videos to talk about like other things that are sort of casually going on. in life.
Exactly, yeah. Doodles and Tea is the perfect, like, sort of update,
Yeah.
aka what's going on right now kind of thing.
We do get a lot of people who say like, oh, I used to love watching you guys, but that was back when I was like hyper-focused on art, and I don't actually do any drawing as a hobby now, so I don't tend to click on the videos because they're very sort of like art focused, and I'm not particularly looking at buying like a new set of pens or... So I feel like this sort of topic makes it a bit more approachable to people who still want to catch up with
Just
us.
having a chat and being cozy, you know?
You guys, and check out the playlist.
Check out the playlist, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can see you for more Doodles and Tea, more Doodle Days, just more of everything.